Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Myself Malkari Santhosh. Hope all are doing fine. In previous videos, I have explained on Java programs for the interview preparation of automation testing. If you gone through my videos, you have observed I have explained each and every program in debug mode as well. So if you like my video, share to your friends and also subscribe to my channel. If you subscribe, it will give me more support to do more further videos on related topics. Let's get started with a new topic. In today's topic, we are discussing about how to transform MySQL database data to simple plain old Java object which is POJO class. So whenever we have any type of technical challenges in our project, this is one of the technical challenge which I have observed. We need to convert the data and we need to convert it into POJO object and make use of the POJO object methods to execute our scenarios in our automation framework. Let's see how we can do this transformation. So I have prepared a visual tables here to make you understand better. Let's continue. I have taken a database table. So the database table is a user. So username, we will be having three columns for the user table, which is user ID, username and user role, and we are connecting to JDBC so that we can connect to the Java and we can transform the data to the plain old Java object. So for that we need a Java class. So the Java class name is user, and also I am creating three variables, which is user ID, username and user role. So we also need getters and setters to set our variables and also to get our variables. So this is the high level overview which I have presented here. So we can discuss each and every topic here in practical. So I gonna create database table for you and also the columns with the data field, and also I will create the JDBC connection and connect to the database via Java. So after that I am going to create a Java class with a user, and I am gonna create the user variables like user ID, username, user role. Then I gonna set the users with setter methods, and also to retrieve the data we are going to give the getter methods. So this whole thing gonna take few we have more things to learn here. So you will get habituated how we are transforming this data. So the video looks more interesting in further, so try to follow till end. So without wasting the time, let's get our video started. So let me open my MySQL workbench. Here first we need to create a database schema. So let me create a database schema. So my database schema will be user profile. As we are creating the user details, I am creating the database name as user profile, and I am keeping all the default char set and default collaboration. Let me apply this. So yes, so it is creating the new schema for us. Let's execute this statement and let me refresh at the left. So if you see we have got the user profile here, but the tables are empty. Let me create a table. So I already have the query here to create the table. Let me execute this. Okay, so let me refresh it. So I have got the table user with user ID, username and user role. Okay, let me insert some data inside it. So this is the insert query. I have three records for my user details. Let me insert this. Okay, now let me run the select statement and see whether the data is inserted correctly. User profile is the schema dot user. Let me run this program. Okay, so we got the three records here. Okay, one is 100 Santhosh, user role is tester, and 101 Ram and developer, and the third user ID is 3, which is Hari, manager. These are the details which we have created as part of database. Now we need to convert these data to a POJO class. Okay, we have created data in the database from the user table. Now we need to use this data and convert this into POJO class. So let me do it in IntelliJ. Let me open my IntelliJ. I already created a Maven project. So I need to add the dependencies of the MySQL connector in order to connect to JDBC. So let me create one more group here, which is dependencies. And we need to add the dependency of the MySQL connector. So we can go to Google and search for MySQL Maven dependency. So you can go to this URL and we can check the latest dependencies and just copy this dependency to your pom.xml and place the dependency here. And once you have placed, you need to build the project. Let me build the project. So in the bottom you can see it is resolving the dependencies, where it is downloading the latest dependencies from the Maven repository, and it will be stored in the .m2 folder in our local. So once your dependencies have been installed, so it will be available in your external libraries. So you can see a new dependency have been added in your libraries, which is mysql.connector. Okay, so now we can create the JDBC connection here and we can write our code. Okay, so now let me create a new class. So the class name is DB connection. So let me write the public static void main method. Public static void in order to connect to a database, we need to first register the driver. So here the driver is MySQL connector. So first we need to load the class name, which is the MySQL driver. To do that, we have class.forName. Here it is expecting a string argument, which is the class name. For those who don't know what is class.forName, let me explain them briefly by taking a sample example. Let me create a new class, which is dummy class. Let me name it as dummy. A new class has been created. Here I am just creating the static block. So static block will be executed once you created the object. Okay, whatever the content available in the static block will be created once you created the object. So let me name it as static block. Now if you mention the class name of dummy here and if you run the program, the static block will be printed in the console. So now it is asking for, there is a exception which needs to be added in the method signature, which is class not found exception. If the class is not found, it will throw this exception. So we need to add a method signature so it will allow to execute. So let me run this program. So it is building the program. So you can see we have the static block which we have mentioned in the dummy class in the static block. So it was printed when you have mentioned in the class.forName. So it will pick the static block message and it will print in the console. If you have an instance block, like let's say there is an instance block and I have printed, let's say instance here, you run the program again, it will print only the static block itself. They will not print the instance block because we haven't mentioned what instance we need to print. Now if you keep new instance, now it is also expecting an exception, so add that exception. now if you print this program, it will print both static block and the instance block from the dummy class. Okay, so now it is taking for this example, the class.forName is just loading the class. So when it is loading the class, it is first printing the static block, and once the class has been loaded, now it is taking the new instance, and the new instance is printing the instance which is available in the instance block. Okay, in the same way we need to also load the driver class into the class.forName. So here our driver class is nothing but our MySQL.connector. Okay, so to register a driver for our MySQL, we have driver manager dot register driver method, and we need to pass the driver instance here. So in our case, we need the MySQL driver instance. In the left hand side, if you see, we have a jar file which was the dependency which we have updated in the pom.xml. So it has created a jar file in our external libraries. So if you see it, we have a package here which is com.mysql. Under it we have two folders, one is CJ and JDBC. If you open the CJ folder, under this we will be having one more folder with JDBC. If you open this, we will be having a driver class here. Okay, so these driver class we need to load here. So how we can do it? If you go to the JDBC connection, in order to create a new instance of driver, you can use new keyword here, new com dot, you can go by this path, com dot mysql dot cj dot jdbc dot driver class. Okay, so now it is expecting an exception here, so we need to add the exception to the method. So now the error is gone. So this is how we register to the driver. So instead of doing this, we are using class.forName and placing the class name to load the class and also register to the driver. Okay, how we can write this? So you can use class.forName. Inside this you need to place the path of the class, which is this entire thing. Okay, now it will accept the class name, and it will also load the class, and no need of registering the user, because if you go to the driver class, inside the driver class you already have a static block which will be loaded when you run the class.forName. So it will be loaded first in the static block. If you come inside, you will be having driver manager.register driver method. So once you have loaded the class, this register driver method will be loaded and a new instance of driver class will be created. Okay, so that is the reason we are using class.forName, and we are mentioning the class name in order to load our driver and also register to the driver to make the JDBC connection. Hope you understood what exactly is class.forName here. So let me remove these two lines, we don't require here, as the class.forName is loading the class and also registering the database connection. So once that is done, now we need to connect to the driver manager. So we have a driver manager class here. So driver manager dot, we need to go with the get connection. So in get connection, it is expecting the URL. So basically the URL and also the username along with the password. So it is expecting 3 parameters here. So we need to first provide the user URL, and then we need to provide the username along with the password here. So the JDBC URL basically, so let me create a URL here. So the URL should be, JDBC and MySQL, and here MySQL is loaded in my local host in 3306 port, and also we need to mention the database name. So here our database name is user profile. Let me copy it. This is our JDBC URL, and then we need to provide the username. User is so we need to add these three details here. Okay, as we are passing the arguments, we can mention the variable names here: URL, user, and so this will return the connection type. Okay, so I am storing it in connection. We need to import the connection from mysql.connector. Okay, so we have imported it from java.sql package. So once you got the connection instance, now you need to create the statement here using the connection dot create statement. So this will give the return type of statement. We need to import it from java.sql. So once you got the statement, now you are ready to execute your query. Okay, so we will define what is our query here: string query. So we need to retrieve the enter the data. So we are writing the query for select statement. Select star from user. Okay, so user is our table name, so it will retrieve all the data from the table. Okay, now we need to, once the statement has been created, now we need to execute the query using the statement dot execute query, and you need to pass the query which we already created, and it will return the return type as result set. Okay, so we have a result set. We need to add the instance here. Okay, now whatever the result which you have executed, that will be stored in the result set object. Okay, now we need to iterate this object and we need to retrieve our data. So in order to retrieve the object, we can use while loop here. So while dot rs dot next. In order to retrieve the data, we are using rs.next, and in order to identify the columns for each row which we have in our database, because we are retrieving the entire data from the user table using the select query, so we need to identify what is the column type it is. Okay, is it a int or a string type? So the first id is a int, so we need to use get id as a int variable. So, okay, so it is asking for the index or also the column label. So the column label for our int is user id, right? So it will retrieve the data. So you can also print this. Same, we need to print other things, which is rs dot get string of, the second column is user name, right? Then the third thing is rs dot get string. So the role is also the string, so we are using label as user role. So the name should be defined as per your database table, because we have three columns here. One is user ID, username and user role. The same thing should be updated here in order to print our case. So let me run this program. So first it will connect the JDBC connection, then it will create the statement. Then once the statement is done, it will execute the query. Now it will print the each and every column data in the console. So you can see it has printed three rows which we have in database, which is user ID, name and role for three data, which is 100, Santhosh, tester and developer and manager. So the same items which are available when you trigger the query here. So you can see the same three details are available. So we have extracted the data from database and we have printed in the console. So we have achieved half of our uh, portion here by converting the database data into console, but still we need to accomplish some other task where we need to place this data in our POJO objects. Okay, whenever you are connecting to the JDBC connection, you need to make sure like the connection should not be get lost. So if sometimes the connection may lose due to some issues, so before that you need to add the try catch block to avoid such exceptions. So use try catch block whenever you are connecting to the JDBC connection. You also need to add the catch block here. Under catch you need to mention trace, so it will print the exception to avoid your connection. Okay, so before the try batch you also need to close your connection. Completed your task, the connection will be get closed. Okay, let me run this program and see. As we added try catch block to our program, so it should return the data from the database. The connection is successful, it has retrieved the data. So now we need to transform these data into POJO class. For that we need to create a user class here. So let me create the user class. The class name is user. As we have three columns in user table, which is user ID, username and user role, we also need to create these three instances here in our user class. So the user ID is an integer, so we need to place integer as user ID, and username is string, and the last one is user role, which is also a string. So you need to clear these class level variables, and we also need to create setters and getters for these three instances. In order to create setters and getters, you can right click and you can use the generate option here. It will automatically create the generate getters and setters for your three variables. Let me select all three variables. So setters and getters are created. So setters will set the value which you have got from database, and getters will retrieve those values. And here we can also add toString method here. Okay, so toString method will retrieve the entire object. So it will return the entire object of all the three instances. So let me go to the DB connection Java class. Now we need to create the object of user here. We need to set the values which we got from the database. So we can do it by user dot set user ID, and we need to add the columns here, get int. So it's user ID. So we need to add the username. We need to set the username here. User dot set name, get string, username, and the third one is user dot set user role, or s dot get string. Now we can remove these system.out.println as we set the value. So once the value has been set, for every instance the user object will be loaded. So in order to do that, we need to add the user to the list. So let me create a list here. So here we need to add each and every user object every time into a list. So I'm adding the generics as user class here. So whenever the entire user object has been set, now I will add it to the list. Add the user to the list. Okay. So every time the user gets loaded, it will be added to the list until the end of the iteration. Now we can iterate these list. For iterating, I am using for each loop here. For each user in list, let me print the user into string method. Every time when it will iterate the user from the list and it will print the string. So let me run this program. Okay, so it's saying column user role is not set. So it should be correct as per your column name. So it should be user underscore role. Okay, it should match the exact name as per the DB table. So the column should be exactly placed here. Then only we can retrieve the data and we can set it to the object. Now let me run this program again. Yes, now we have retrieved the data and we have placed it in the POJO class. So for every user instance we have, so it has added the user ID, username, user role for our Java class. Okay, now once we got this data, we can also use this data and we can also play with this data now. Now in order to retrieve only the developer role users, we can use if condition and add user dot get user role dot equals developer. So whomever the developer, we need those data to be print. Okay, now only the user ID with 101 and username with norm will be printed in the console. The remaining will be excluded because we have kept the condition. So as developer, it will retrieve only the user data as developer. Let me run this program again. Yes, now you can see we have achieved it. So we have retrieved only the developer data. Okay, so this is how we can use our user class to set our values and also get our values. Okay, here we are setting the user ID, username and user role, and here we are retrieving it using the get user role. Okay, now let me show you more detail in the debug mode and help you understand what exactly happening here. Okay, let me keep a debug point here and let me run this program in debug mode. Okay, you can see we have a connection established here. So we got the connection object and we have retrieved the query. Okay, so the query is select star from user. Now we have entered into the iteration of the result set object. Now the user you are seeing is empty, so the user ID is 0 and username is null and user role is null because we haven't set any value till now. Okay, now if you go to the next step, it had added the user ID to 100 and username is still null and user name is also still null. Now we need to set these two values also. Let me set the username. Now the username is set to Santhosh. Okay, and if I go to next step, it will add the user role as well. So now all the three instances has been added to the user class. Okay, now we need to add these user instance to the list. Now the list size is 0 here. If you go to next step, it will add the entire user object to the list, which is user id equal to 100, username is Santhosh, and user role is tester. Okay, and the size is 1. Now if you have the data in the result set, now it will again reiterate the loop as we have two more records, so it will do the iteration again. So again it will add the details to our user class, the username, user id and user role. So now the user id 101, username, rom and user role developer has been added to our user class, and now we are setting the second instance of user to the list. So now the list will be size 2, and we will be having two levels of data here. One is user id is 100 and user id is 101. Okay, so again it will iterate the data, and it will add the third instance as well, which is manager of Hari. Okay, now the iteration has been done. If it will check whether we have many more rows in the database. If not, else it will close the connection, and it will come to the for loop of our list, and it will check how many rows are available in our list. As the size indicates 3, it will iterate all 3 rows, and it will check the condition whether it is a user role is developer, then it will print the condition. Okay, it will check all 3 rows and it will print the condition. Now as user role developer having only one row instance, it will retrieve the data. Okay, we have transformed the database data to POJO class. Okay, now let me give a quick recap what we have done till now. Okay, so we have created a database table with user, and we have inserted 3 records into our user table with user id, username and user role. And once we have created the database data, now we have created a Maven project, and we have added a dependency of MySQL connector. Okay, and we have created a database connection class, and where we have connected the JDBC connection using driver manager. Before that, we have created a Class.forName and added the driver class to load the class and also register the driver of our MySQL. Later we have connected to using the URL and username and password, and we have executed the query which we need, and we have retrieved the data into the result set. Later we have created the user class with 3 instances, as we need to store our data in our POJO class as user id, username and user role, and we have created the setters and getters for our 3 instances, and also the toString method to print the entire instance of our object. And we have included our setters and getters here. Whenever we are retrieving the data from database, we are setting the values to the user instance, and also we are iterating all the user instances into one list object every time. So the list will be showed as per our user object instances. Once we have collected all the data and stored in the list of user, we are now iterating the user list, and we are taking the data which we need, and we are printing the data of your user instance. Okay, so this is how we transform the data from database to POJO class. So this is one of the technical challenge where everyone will face in their automation framework. So this is how we can transform the data. So this implementation makes easy to others to identify what's happening in the code, how we are connected to JDBC, and how we are retrieving the data using the POJO classes. These POJO classes are very powerful. Whenever we are in execution, it will be really helpful to identify the data, to retrieve the data using getters and setters. Okay, so hope you all enjoyed the session. Like, share and subscribe to my channel for further videos. So it will be helpful to me to give more inputs and more further updates, or create more videos on further items. Thank you.